This is an RNZ podcast.
Hi, I'm Kathryn Ryan. Each week, our political commentators analyse the latest happenings in Parliament and beyond. Listen live on 9 to noon each Monday, just after the 11 o'clock news, or right here on this podcast. Let's get into it. Brigitte, Morten and Dale Husband are our political commentators this morning. Kia ora koroa.
Morena.
Kia ora to you, Mihi ane ka koe, Kathryn.
Kia ora.
Me koe hoki, Brigitte. Kia ora koroa. Good to talk again.
Great. Dale is long-time broadcaster with Radio Waitangi, of course, and a presenter on Radio Waitangi of Current Affairs. Brigitte Morten is a director with public and commercial law firm Franks Ogilvie, a former senior ministerial advisor for a previous national-led government, a member of the National Party, and there's a change to her disclosures. You made the point you used to campaign for the current Finance Minister, Nicola Willis, in her electorate campaign at elections, but she's not doing one this year.
She's gone list only.
List only. So what are you going to be doing in the weeks? Where are your pamphlets being delivered now?
Out in Hutt South. It'll be out with Christopher Bishop volunteering out there this time.
Very good. All right. Let's have a look at Waitangi Day, the whole weekend, in fact, and the politics. Fair to say, Dale, on a political front, a quieter one than last year?
Yeah, somewhat bland, wasn't it, in comparison, where we had the big activations that Tamiiti took to Waitangi. And, of course, we're right in the heat of the treaty principles issue. So it had a lot of colour and spectacle challenges and also theatrics last year. A bit devoid of it this year and somewhat bland. I thought the delivery from both Luxon, Seymour and even Winston was fairly predictable. The only real drama came when, I suppose, Edu Kapakingi got up and had a dig at Te Pāti Māori, which raised the ire, of course, of Kitty, the wife of the co-leader, who went across quite appropriately to Kathryn during that Waiata tautoko and eyeballed Edu. He's standing up for his mama, and that's understandable as well. So they've still got
Kitty Tamahiri Waititi you're talking about, yeah?
That's right. Yeah, and they've still got something to work through, obviously, and court cases and whatnot to be resolved. But it's tough turf at the moment for the Māori Party, although they remain upbeat in public commentary. We think that some of the trust in them out in voter land has been eroded. They've got some ground to make up, obviously.
That was a message to them, definitely. Let's just stay with that for a moment, Dale. I was reading some of the feedback that came from Te Tai Tokoro in particular, saying, the Te Pāti Māori is losing ground, and amongst our people, and that's a big call to make. But it's also a forum where people are going to notice it when a call like that is made.
Interestingly, I was speaking with Metiria 2 days now at the Faculty of Law at Otago. She actually thinks that maybe it's time for John and even Rawiri to consider stepping aside, not that I think they will, saying that Debbie is well positioned to front the party. Came a little bit from left field when we were discussing that earlier in the day. But look, there's still a lot of water to flow under this Māori Party bridge. And one thing is that, look, we're whānau people, and we know that there's always going to be pressures and arguments that occur within whānau settings. It's no different in a political setting. But pundits, of course, will say, well, it could be the death knell for Te Pāti Māori. I think time will tell, and we'll just have to see what they're able to shape going forward. We've still got 9 months till the election. And I wouldn't write them off yet. No,
and we're going to talk in a moment about what you're looking for in this election year. That's clearly one of yours, Dale. What did you? Is it a happy Waitangi, especially for the incumbent government, if it's a bit of a boring Waitangi? In terms of it's a wonderful event over the weekend. We can't forget all that. But when it comes to the politics itself, when there's a lack of drama, is that good news for the incumbent? Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think distracting for the incumbent, any kind of politics that doesn't involve them, is good. I think for most New Zealanders as well, they perceive that drama at Waitangi as a drama at Waitangi. They don't perceive it necessarily as something that affects their vote. So the least kind of talking and being involved in that drama that the incumbents, and I think that probably goes for Labour as well, the better off for them. I think what was really interesting to me coming out of Waitangi, and Dale's touched on this, as the sort of inner turmoil of the sort of Māori politics, is that we've been talking for the last couple of years about actually whether or not the activations and the protests that has risen division up against this current government on Te Tiriti issues could translate into votes. And that's looking really shaky as we head towards the election in November. I think it's particularly interesting because obviously now you're looking at, Te Pāti Māori, you're possibly looking at some independents, you're looking at Labour looking at those electorate seats, and then the Greens also announcing at Waitangi their candidates for some Māori electorate seats as well.
This is the other thing that's happening. We're going to talk at the end about Penny Henere's announcement of his retirement, but let's talk about this earlier because he's not the only one. You've got Adrian Rufa, very respected assistant speaker at the moment, just testing my memory at the moment, Dale. Labour is actually losing some very experienced people, some of whom they may have expected to be contesting Māori electorate seats. Is that a good renewal, or could it pose some challenges right when those seats are anticipated to be in play?
It blindsided most, didn't it? But I've got to acknowledge the pressure that parliamentarians are under, the real sacrifices made by families, and if your family's in need of you, then step aside, let someone else come through. Ka hau te rangatahi, time to cast a new net. Penny obviously has got a lot of experience now with a dozen or so years and some high profile work within the Labour Party. Is going to be an enormous benefit to Māori interests outside of Parliament, knowing the machinations of the way the parliamentary system works, where to access the right sorts of resourcing needed by his people. So they'll be rubbing their hands together at the thought of this experienced politician now working from the outside in instead of the inside out. A loss to Chris Hipkins and his team, yes, but hey, listen, if you're not a Hundi, then step aside. And same with Adrian, he recognised the same thing.
Calvin Davis is gone already, also, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But I'm less worried about those who are leaving and more interested in those who are coming forward for the good fight. And Māori interests have been absolutely kicked around here by what seems to be a very hostile coalition government. We'll see this one off as we have previous governments who had poor attitudes towards resolving Māori issues and injustices of yesteryear. But the fight goes on. It's the struggle without end.
Yeah. For Labour, there's some renewal happening full stop, actually. I mean, I've mentioned there are three of their more experienced Māori MPs and former ministers who have either moved on or are signalling they're moving on, Brigitte. And there's others signalling they're going as well. In some ways, is that renewal potentially a good thing for Labour? Because, let's face it, they took a drubbing at the last election. There's still... People are busy trying to get rid of the memories of the pandemic and post-pandemic, but in some ways is this an opportunity for the party to show some fresh faces?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is an opportunity for them to show some fresh faces. The problem that Hipkins has got, though, is at the moment he's not really presenting a sort of front bench team to the electorate. We've got a lot we see Hipkins a lot, as you expect as a leader. You see Barbara Edmonds in her finance role. Beyond that, you don't see much from the deputy leader, Kamal Sepuloni. You don't see much from people sort of behind that. And I think for Hipkins, he's going to really have to start demonstrating that he's got a team that you can trust.
Education, we know, remain issues. They might not sit as high as cost of living, but they remain important issues where people want to see what your plan is.
Yeah, and I think on education, Stanford, from the national...
She's very visible,
She's very visible. She's made some really high-profile, politically popular decisions. And the problem for Labour is that they've struggled to kind of get cut through about opposing why they might be a problem. I think in large part because actually it's really unclear who's holding the pen on education policy on that side of the aisle. And I think for Hipkins, this is his chance to renew, to show that there is that faces. But he doesn't have a particularly strong team, I think, to go from, and so he's going to have to make some really tough calls about who he's promoting and who he's saying it's actually your time to
Michael Wood is trying to come back, ironically, former minister, and Craig Rennie, who was associated with the previous administration, worked for the finance minister.
Yeah, but both of those present problems. Michael Wood, you can't give him a front bench position.
That's my point. They're not entirely new, are they?
That's it. And Craig Rennie, obviously, what are you going to have competition over who's going to hold the finance portfolio between him and Barbara Edmonds?
People who've come in and moved fairly quickly into roles. I'm thinking one John Key, I'm thinking one Christopher Luxon, I'm thinking
Stephen
one Don
Joyce,
Bresch.
yeah, absolutely.
Let's see if they go there. I mean, Labour's internal politics is all its own thing as well. Let's come back to that broad question, Dale, of what you are looking for. You've already touched on some of it, Te Pāti Māori and its prospects this year. What else are you looking for in terms of the big themes that are going to define election year?
Well, obviously, respect for the treaty is paramount in Te Māori. We know that the generosity of our people has been enormous with 2 cents in the dollar deals, but to be belittled and demeaned in the way that we have been politically with this coalition government across the last 2.5 years is sitting poorly with Māori interests. Yes, it's the cost of living, but even when, and we'll touch on it later, Kathryn and Brigitte, no doubt, the unemployment rates, while they might be sitting at 5s, 5.5s in the national stats, we know that for our young people it's sitting closer to 20%, and we still have this huge amount of people who are bailing out and being forced to head to Aussie, hoping for better opportunities, not always getting them. Cost of living is what is hitting everybody each and every day, and I'm sure that both you feel it too when you go and do your grocery shop. Things are just staggeringly high, and this is what is going to be the most important issue. So it might sound a bit ho-hum and a bit normal in an election year, but housing, health, education and cost of living are the big ticket items, and it's going to be interesting to see how these parties put their messaging out and garner the support they need to get the numbers to govern.
And to that point, how big a test for the Finance Minister this next budget, with little to spend, cost of living pressures on the health system, people wanting to see some kind of even can you keep up level of new funding. It's going to be a difficult budget.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a difficult budget. I think what the key is here is about actually the government being able to sell their message about the reform they're doing, delivering on those outcomes. So I think if you go a sort of traditional left-right response, you would expect to see in a Labour-led government budget big spending numbers. I think what you're going to see is much more of a narrative in this budget about actually the reforms that are happening underneath to remove those pressures on costs.
Is the problem, rightly or wrongly, that we are not seeing the kind of real-world shifts, or certainly not feeling them, to support that message? The unemployment, interesting that you raise it, Dale, not only did it uptick a little, but it actually showed how much we undercount unemployment, because the 15,000 new jobs, was it approximately, there were 14,000 new people seeking them. So where were they previously? Were they not even trying? Were they perhaps in education or just not even trying? And the underutilisation rate, the amount of part-time work again in this data up. So again, people might say 5.2 isn't the worst unemployment rate, but it just shows we undercount it.
I think it definitely, if you looked under that number, there was some positives within it, but it is a complicated picture about the fact that for our communities, they're disproportionately feeling this economic factor. So 15,000 new jobs being created is fantastic. But of course, if you've got people looking for them not in the same spots where those jobs are, it's very difficult. I was really pleased to see, and if you're looking at sort of a positive indicator, is actually our not an education and training number for youth has gone down. That has to be one of the most positive, because we know if people are in education and training younger, they're more likely to stay in education and training. Do you believe,
Dale, if it is selling the reforms message, and that's what we've seen already, their perspective is we were just given, what did Nicola Willis call it last week, the previous government had driven the economy into a ditch, was her quote. And we're doing all the hard yards to try and get it back on track. Do you believe they have the people, and particularly the leader and the Prime Minister, to sell that message to people, to carry that message, Dale?
No, I don't. And because we need to see real jobs being created. A lot of the data is coming off people forced into part-time work, and we all know the stories of some people forced to work 3-4 different jobs for a day, a week, to muster together enough putia to do well by their whānau. So it's a complex issue. I do understand too that this coalition government did inherit debt. We did go through a very challenging time, there's no doubt about that, and it would be churlish of me to just bag the coalition as though it's all their fault. But they haven't moved fast enough, and still this perception lingers that the most important issue is re-election, and pandering to middle ground New Zealand and middle class New Zealand and landlords is still a rhetoric that is being shared out in Civvy Street. And so the data and stats that are being furnished isn't counteracting that at the pace that will affect the way people vote. And another thing from Te Ao Māori, we are fiercely protective of our proud, independent history and reputation globally. And there's a real fear that by constantly pandering to the big money players globally, we're losing something of our own identity. And I'm sure that many New Zealanders, Māori included, want us to fiercely protect our reputation for fairness.
All right, what else are you looking for to define this year, Bridget?
I think the government came in with some big promises around delivery. That was one of their key messages, was about the fact that the last government promised a lot but didn't deliver a lot. So I think what I'm really looking for is basically that sort of almost checklist of, are those big reforms, happening? Has the big changes actually happened around housing and RMA reform? And we've got lots of legislation still sitting on the books, moving through at pace, but there's a lot of infrastructure and things that needs to have some spades in the ground.
Another thing to look at, and again, we're only in February, as we know, anything can happen in election years, but the poll trends have been fairly consistent. I've had this conversation with a couple of people in the first couple of weeks back. A disproportionate, compared to most cycles, a disproportionate presence of the smaller parties all doing well at once. National is down. It's actually behind Labour currently, head-to-head polling, but at the moment that's incumbent looked like they, on current polling, could squeak in with a couple of spare seats. The issue is whether National can rebuild its share of that vote, which comes down to the very conversation we're having. And the other issue I'm interested in, Dale, is whether Labour, given its result just 2 and a bit years ago, has a bit of soft vote, protest vote, and if so, will it stay there or move? Those numbers are going to be key in determining who a certain Mr. Peters may be negotiating with potentially at the end of this year, right, Dale?
Yeah, tēnā koe. I've been speaking a lot. What do you reckon, Bridget?
I think in terms of those polls, I think they're indicative of two things. One, I think we're actually maturing a little bit as an MMP country, and the fact that people actually do see the ability to vote not just for the left or for the blue or the red team. So I think that's a little bit about people seeing more choices. I think we're also seeing the international trends around, generally since COVID we have seen a pushback against the incumbents and a desire for more from out of their governments. You just got to look at Australia and the UK to see that people are very quick to judge the incumbent government. So I do think you have to look at those polls in that context. Ultimately, for National, they do need to rebuild some of their base vote, because they do need to have the strength within the coalition agreements to be able to push back and as the bigger party. So that's going to be a big factor, without a doubt.
Okay. Now, the Mayor of Wellington, who was a former senior minister, of course, and a former Labour leader, met this morning with the Prime Minister. And I imagine neither of them, a few short days ago, would have wanted to have an epic infrastructure fail, and a very graphic one, that has a capital city with raw sewage pouring out into Cook Strait and telling its people for months they will not be able to swim in its south coast beaches. Is this going to stretch beyond a local story, Bridget? Is it yet another example of the state of infrastructure and the fact that governments, one after the other, have not come up with a plan?
I think for Wellingtonians, it's not surprising that our pipes have failed us once again, and we have got water or sewage in our streets and now in our sea. So I don't think it comes as a surprise, but it obviously is very disappointing. I think it is indicative across the country. Would not be something new necessarily for Aucklanders, who have had many problems with their beaches being closed intermittently over the last few months. I do think it's indicative of that infrastructure sort of investment, but I think for most people they will also look to the previous Wellington council for this, rather than necessarily blaming it on the central government.
Local water done well is the name of the central government policy.
Shocking stuff. The images are just horrid, aren't they?
Yeah.
And talk about a lack of environmental consideration when, it's Turd City off the coast at the moment, and it just sort of points to intergenerational underinvestment and some ineptitude, I'd suggest as well. a review. We've got to get to the bottom of it, if you'll excuse the term. And it's just it's a real slight on taking the eye off the ball across time. And so Andrew Little, the new mayor there, he has every right to demand an in-depth investigation and to really get to work on it.
Look, multiple
Auckland
factors here. It's a
stuff for
multinational company.
years.
Yeah, there's and same in Auckland, to Bridget's point. But here we are again talking about why there has not been a financially manageable mechanism for councils to upgrade these facilities, or indeed to make sure that they're being run properly. And, local water done well, as we said, is National's response to what it canned Labour's previous policy. Is this just a case where this happens this week and everyone moves on next week, do you think, Dale, or does it start to become something that moves up the list of people's concerns?
Well, you might want to change your tagline for a start, local water done well. Look, it's going to, just as the byproducts are, it's going to hang around for a while yet. But this takes some significant and concerted efforts to support communities. I mean, it's frustrating. We've got the wastewater treatment plant up here in Auckland, which is starting to alleviate some of the problems, and big sewerage pipelines to make things better. But, for all of my life, and I grew up when they put the oxidation ponds in the Manukau Harbour too, and that never worked. So we've got to find systems that can truly position us as first-rate cities of the world. And let's face it, Wellington's our capital. I saw a report in The Guardian about the stench coming out of Wellington, which doesn't reflect well internationally for us, and, another kick in the guts for New Zealand's international reputation.
All right, let's have a look at a couple of the fast-track applications that have hit speed bumps, if you like. One is just the slowing down of the Samtana application in central Otago. Well, less than the slowing down, it's more that the board, considering it, is saying it'll be later in the year, there are complications, it's a complex matter, so, the fast-track is a little bit less fast than it might have been. And the other was this interim decision on the iron sands as well. Just as a procedural matter, it sounds like a draft decision is out turning it down, but there is, as part of the law, an appeal process and the possibility to go back for another go. Is this going to soothe some, Dale, who feared that the whole thing was just a tick box process?
Well, it soothes me in the sense that they've finally come and found reason. I spoke with Debbie Ngāti Wapaka earlier in the day, Kathryn, and obviously she's elated at this decision. But when you look back and put it in perspective chronologically, we're going way back to 2013 when the first tunnel was made to scrape the floor, and we know the plumes that it will create. Then it went back and forward through environment courts, challenges by cultural opposition, and envirocultural opposition has really been at the core of this chasm, the Kiwis Against Seabed Mining. They desperately wanted to ensure that this didn't happen. So, for people who are nervous, like myself, about the fast-track kaupapa or proposals, this at least suggests that there is some common sense in the process. And she is absolutely elated, as the people of South Taranaki and of the South Taranaki Bight will be.
In what is a draft decision, just to point out again.
Sure.
I think with this fast-track legislation, it's proving in many ways that it is what they said it is on the box, that there is a process that has to be gone through, that there is the ability for those with the technical advice and those that are directly affected to be part of that process and feed into the process. So I think it does take some of the political heat out of it for the government in terms of these fast-track proposals, but ultimately it also demonstrates that I think every one of these decisions, when they do come through, is going to be a political opportunity for the government to either celebrate that they're getting some infrastructure underway or demonstrating that there is that balance.
Just the New Zealand minerals deal, which remains a bit of a mystery, and this has been played down somewhat by the Prime Minister anyway, but then we heard not long after that was played down that indeed there is a commitment to explore cooperation on critical minerals. Is this a case to what you were alluding to earlier, Dale, that our leaders and our diplomats feel the need at the moment to be very positive in their interactions with the US? Do we know, we are a tiny player in terms of the vast quantum or quantity of some of these minerals that are needed. Do we know enough, do you think, about what's being discussed?
Ours is a utopia in the South Pacific. We have the most special land in the world. We are geographically removed from everyone else because we're the chosen people. We should feel good about ourselves. And to just line up and be a pool for more minerals to help to energise the US war machine, to me, just absolutely great. And that's why so many Kiwis and certainly many, many Māori want this independent stance that we pride ourselves on. I mean, we've got the head honchos over there. They want us for a mutually beneficial future, and the states want our support. Thanks for buying our Seahawk helicopters in the US Pacific Summit, all in Honolulu. If they did find some critical minerals in vast quantities, what's next? They'd want to annex us, wouldn't they, Kathryn?
Right, your take on it. Again, is it diplomats trying to placate the administration and play nicely, or more than that?
Yeah, I think we have to be realistic and mature about the fact that we can't have discussions about our feelings on Trump or independence in a vacuum. It does have real impacts on our economy, and I think you can see that Trump is someone who is very, very happy to play that economic card. And the introduction of higher tariffs earlier last year obviously had a massive impact on our government books and our ability to fund. So you can't remove those discussions at all. And we do know that Trump is playing a pretty dangerous game. He's put some deadlines around these agreements that, we could see higher tariffs if we don't agree to it. So I do see why they needed to tread quite carefully about what was said and what was not said. I do think probably the Prime Minister could have been a bit clearer in his communications.
Frothy and speculative.
Yeah,
what we were actually
discussing here. Yeah. I think that was a bit clumsy.
Thank you both. So I appreciate your time. Ngā mihi nui to Dale Husband and to Brigitte Morten.